Hi everyone, seasons changing, and this is that time of the year where winter slowly fades into spring and soon spring slowly fades into summer. So I thought of doing a season themed painting portraying all the four seasons through birch trees on one single canvas. So what I'm trying to do first here is toning my entire canvas. At this point I'm using acrylic paints. I'm mixing up cobalt blue with a lot of white, and I am putting that in 3 sections of this canvas. And I'll save the fourth quadrant, the fourth section, and I'll add a little bit of gray or a little bit of black to that mix of blue and white, so that the fourth quadrant is a little bit gray. That is the part which I will use to show the winter part, as the winter skies are normally a little tad grayish. Like I said, at this point of time I'm using acrylic paint for toning the canvas, which is absolutely not necessary. Like the rest of the painting, you can use oil paints for toning the canvas too, but I was very impatient and I wanted to start the actual painting on that day only. I did not want to wait another day, so I thought I'll do the base coat with or the toning of the canvas with acrylic paint so that it dries quickly and I can actually start the painting on the same day, in fact within a few minutes. And you can see that I used some crisscross strokes and tried to get a little bit of blending, but if some brush strokes are left, it does not really matter too much, because most of this background is going to be just a depiction of the sky and the peeking through the trees and the leaves, and most of it is going to get covered anyway, so it really does not matter how smooth or how rough it is, or if you have left any brush strokes, it will not matter. Now I am taking my pencil, and you can use a pencil, a color pencil, a charcoal, whatever you have in hand, and I'm drawing some birch trees. And you will see that all of these trees, I am making them not really cylindrical, simple cylindrical towers. I am adding a lot of variety by making some of them thicker, some of them taller, some of them a little bit crooked, some of them shorter. And the whole idea is to put about 2 to 4 trees in each quadrant. And I don't want to make it too crowded, and have to make some of them quite a bit taller, some of them a little bit shorter, some of them crooked, and that will add a lot of variety to the type of trees, because all trees, even if they are all birch, are not exactly the same, so look very natural, very realistic. I'm adding some side branches as well, but you really don't have to do a lot of details at this point. It just will give you a mapping of where to put your trees, and that is all I am going for at this point. Like I said, each quadrant should have about 2 to 4 trees. You do not want to overcrowd it. At the same time, you do not want to leave too much of space with nothing on it. Once I am done with drawing the trees and I'm happy with positioning of the trees, then I'll start with painting the trunks first. But another time I want to mention that it's important to add a lot of variety. Now for the trunks, I have mixed together raw umber, or you can use a burnt umber as well, and mixed it with a little bit of white to give a muddy color. And this is my base coat. I'm going to put it in all of the tree trunks. But an important thing to note here is that you will see that my brush strokes are not all flat, they are going rounded. I'm making rounded brush strokes because the tree trunks are rounded, and if you put flat strokes, it will look very two-dimensional, and our goal here is to make a realistic looking painting. So for the sake of realism, if you make those brush strokes that you're putting in rounded, it will be easier for you. And the brushes that I've used in this painting are about like if I have used 5 brushes, 4 of them were all damaged brushes, and that actually helped in adding a lot of texture to my painting. For leaves and landscapes, foliage, tree trunks, these are not really smooth things. Other than the detail part, you need to have a lot of textures, and these damaged brushes helped me build all those textures very nicely. You can see that I'm adding some very dark side branches coming out of the trees. There is no need to be perfect or exact or even very careful about the side branches, because once I start putting in the leaves, most of this is going to be covered. Unlike most of my paintings, this is a much longer tutorial, about 40 minutes or so. I know some of my viewer friends like shorter tutorials so that they can watch within 5 to 10 minutes and they're done and they get the gist of it. But some of my viewers have requested a longer tutorial so that they can learn step by step what exactly is happening in this painting, and that is why I thought of doing a longer painting or longer tutorial this time. But in case you prefer the shorter ones, you know there is that circle settings button and underneath the video in the YouTube. Press that and select whatever speed level you want. You can make it even slower, you can make it up to 2 times slower and up to 2 times faster. So whatever you choose to do, if you want to finish the tutorial faster, just click on the 2 times faster button and it will be faster. And if you want to paint along with me, so as you want it even slowed down, then you can hit the pause button at any time, slow it down 2 more times, and you can make it adjust to your requirements. So that is something I really wanted to tell you today and encourage all of the viewers. That is what I do when I watch other YouTube videos and tutorials, or anything for that matter. If I want them to go fast, if I'm just watching something to pass time, then I make it faster. If I want to really focus and learn something, then I pause and make it slower, and just make it to suit my requirements. That is an extremely nice feature of YouTube videos, so do use it. So you can see that I am still blocking in all the birch trees, and each of the 4 quadrants will depict one of each of the seasons: winter, summer, spring, and fall. Now I am using white paint and putting in the center of the trunks. It's not exactly the center, it's kind of more towards one side, and this is kind of going to make the look of the highlight part of the tree trunks. And note that because I'm using white on top of the muddy gray brown paint, it is kind of getting a little bit mixed with the background, and it's not really becoming all white, which is completely fine. I want all the different colors and textures. And once again, let me remind you that you can see that my brush strokes are all rounded and not flat. If you use brush strokes every time in the tree trunk that are rounded, you will end up having a very realistic looking, rounded looking, 3-dimensional looking tree trunk, which is what we're going for over here. So on one side, I'm putting these lighter highlights, and I'll go back again later and add some more prominent white highlights. This kind of mixed with the background and become a little gray white. It's not like absolutely white, but later I'll come back with some white and do some more white, but that will come later. But before that, I will make some blue gray mix and add to the other side. Before that, let me show you a couple of more tree trunks that I'm doing. Once again, note that each of my brush strokes are kind of rounded, so that it gives the impression of the roundness of the tree trunk. Some of the areas are becoming more white, the other areas are becoming lighter, and that is perfectly fine. Not every area of a tree trunk, especially in case of birches, are the same. The texture, the difference, and the different colors will actually make it look much more realistic. And to my last few tree trunks, still blocking in on the first set of highlights. you can see that I'm adding some more brighter white highlights and leaving those areas chunky to keep them very bright and white. So if you have a wet surface in case of oil painting and you want the highlights to show up, just put them in chunks and do not try to blend them too much. As soon as you try to blend them, it will pick up the underlying colors and look muddy. Now I'm adding a mix of blue and white onto the other side. This will kind of mimic the reflection of the sky colors on the other side of the tree trunk and will make a very realistic looking shadow area. I personally think that this is the most important part of the painting, to add these blue to mimic the reflection of the sky and also to give very nice dark shadows contrasting with the light area. If you have watched any of my tutorials before, you would know that I'm a big fan of hyping contrast. So I always try to make my light areas lighter and darker areas darker and putting them side by side so that in the contrast really shows up. When the contrast is eye-catching, it makes your entire painting look much brighter. I'm switching on to a much smaller flat brush and I'm using a mix of brown, which is burnt umber I have used, mixed with a little bit of Prussian blue and adding in some of the tree trunks. Once again, I'm using a damaged brush so that I get a lot of textured look, because this is not the final tree trunks that I'm painting, so the texture will actually add to benefit my painting. Now a part of the birch trees has some gnarls or knotted areas, and those are much darker than the rest of the areas. So in those areas you will see that I'm leaving some very dark marks in some areas, and that will depict the knots. That is one beautiful thing I love about painting birch tree trunks, is those knots, the little blue, black, brown, very dark dots and irregular marks. And that is one thing I love about landscapes in general, is that you can paint a lot of irregularities and it actually looks very nice and actually makes the painting look even more natural. And if you have been a subscriber of this channel and watched a lot of my paintings, you will see that even when I start off with a landscape, I typically add some figurative pieces into the landscape, like a human body or an animal or something that, in my opinion, adds a little bit more interest in the painting. But I sometimes do like to do a very simple landscape like this one, and I personally think that this is a very easy, simple landscape that everybody can follow step by step and do it. By the way, as for oil paints, I am using Winton oil paints, and I do have some of Gamlin colors as well, and my black and white are from Weber's Permalba. But it really does not matter what exact brand of paint you're using. Whatever colors I have wanted and whatever colors I got in whichever brand, as long as they are good quality brands where the paint is very pigmented, I'm fine with that. Now I'm starting off adding the leaves. Once again, I'm choosing a very damaged brush to get a very textured look. And at this point, I'm just dabbing in lots of purples, and I'll also add a lot of crimsons in this area. This is the area which will be my spring quadrant. So out of the 4 quadrants in the painting, this bottom left corner I chose to be the spring, but it really does not matter where you want to put which season. You just have to put them in any quadrant that you want. You can flip them over and put it anywhere you want. So like I said, I'm going to use a lot of crimsons, but at this point I'm first putting in mixing a little bit of white with my crimson to get a pink color, like the almond blossoms have a lot more of these pink colors. Not really very characteristic of the birch trees, but this is very characteristics of spring. In spring, this is the color that you would see all around you, and I wanted to stay true to that, so I added a little bit more of my imagination as far as the colors are concerned. As for reference photo, I did not really use any reference photo for the leaf part, but for the tree trunks, I looked up in Pixabay, which is an awesome site for reference photos, and I chose a few treetop pictures of birch trees so that I can figure out how birch trees look like and what different shapes I can give them. Other than that, I did not really use much of reference in the painting. Typically, I do use a lot of reference photos, but this was not that case. And all the supplies that I've used in this painting with links of most of them are in the video description below. I'm painting on a 16 by 20 canvas, but you can go even bigger, 18 by 24, or as big as you want to be, or you can go a little bit smaller, like 11 by 14 or something like that. But I would not suggest going even smaller than 11 by 14. Then you won't be able to paint all the 4 seasons in one canvas and make it look really good. You wouldn't have enough space for each of the seasons. But what you can do is you can find smaller canvases, anything starting from 5 by 7 to 8 by 12 or even 11 by 14, and paint out each of these seasons in each quadrant and then place them side by side on the wall, and that would look superb too. That would be the 4 seasons in 4 different canvases. So you can do this 4 seasons painting in one single canvas, or you can also make it look in spread out in 4 different canvases. Now back onto the painting, what I did all this while was adding in a lot of crimson and purple and blue first. And note that I'm kind of using a dotting kind of method. All I'm doing is getting thick paint and dotting on top of the already existing paint. The reason I'm dotting is that on the very base I have used quite a bit of paint, and if I press any harder, it will get blended with the underlying layers and it will not pop out the way I want to. Also, important thing to note here is that wherever you're putting very dark colors, next to it put your very light colors. So if you have put like dark crimsons or blues or dark purple in certain areas, just next to it put some dots of the very bright light pink, and that will make those light pinks pop amongst the darker colors. Just what I was talking about, contrast a little bit ago. And pretty much in the entire painting, no matter what color I'm using for what season, I'm using this dotting method for tree leaves. This is not exactly a 100% realistic leaf painting technique. You can go for even further details, but I wanted to keep it a very simple painting so that even beginners who have never painted with oil paints before can paint it too. So I just use one single dotting method and use that for the entire painting. Now I'm coming on to the summer section, and here I'm going to first put a base layer. And the base layer I'm kind of scrubbing into the weave of the canvas and adding a lot more, although I'm letting a little bit of the sky area peek through, but I'm adding a lot more color, spreading it out, or kind of pushing it into the weave of canvas a lot more. And the base color here I'm choosing is sap green. I'm also using some viridian greens. I'm also mixing some raw umber and burnt umber here and there to give a little bit of brownish looks, which you see at the end of summer or in midsummer or something like that. So mixing and matching all of those colors that you see in summer, but you want to put the darker tones first and the lighter tones on top of it. So you would see that I'm using more of the viridian greens, sap greens, browns, the darker tones first, and pressing them all in the weave of the canvas first. and then working on it. When I worked on this painting, I did this painting over 4 days in 8 different sittings. That is because of my personal reasons, because of various responsibilities that I have in home and work and all that. I cannot sit at a painting for more than 2 hours or so, but the entire painting can be done in about 3 to 4 hours. If you work really fast, it can be done in even 2 hours in one sitting only. You do not have to do it in like 3-4 different days. But if whatever it's time you have to work according to that. So pick your time and work it out. Now I'm adding the lighter colors. So I'm mixing in cadmium yellow, and I'm taking cadmium yellow and mixing it a tiny bit of sap green to it, and I am again using that dotting method and putting in the leaves in different areas. I love this yellow color of the leaves. It's one of my favorite leaf colors to paint on, so this was kind of very satisfying. In a way, I think that this painting turned out to be a very relaxing painting exercise. So if you are the one who, like me, who paints because it relaxes you, it takes off anxiety and stress out of you, this would be a very good painting exercise for you then. It was very calming, very relaxing, very soothing, and the colors of the nature, it kind of made me feel so refreshed. It kind of took my mind off all the worries and troubles of everyday life, and just made me paint so freely. And it was an awesome experience. So yes, if you are the one who paints for relaxation, for stress relief, this is a good painting for you. Again, talking about the materials that I've used for this particular oil painting, I have used Liquin as my medium. So like if you use acrylic paints, you go for either gloss medium or water. In that, whenever I needed to thin down the paint or make it a little bit loose for it to be able to move, I added a little bit of Liquin to it. It's kind of like a gel, and it dries pretty fast. So and like typically oil painting, it takes days, and especially in humid weather or hot weather, it can even take 7 days to dry. But in case of Liquin, it's a fast drying medium, so if you paint with Liquin, within 6 to 8 hours your paint will be dry enough to work on the next layer. So that's a definite advantage of using liquids, because neither I'm not a patient person, so I cannot wait 7 days for to start on the next layer, and secondly, it also gives a very nice sheen to the painting. It's a very flat yet nice velvety look to the painting once it dries. So that's another advantage too. Now moving to the third quadrant, which is my fall quadrant. So I'll start off with the same colors that I've used for summer in the background. So that will be sap greens, browns, and tiny bits of blues, darker colors. But later I'll bring in a lot of crimsons and magentas and oranges, because those are the colors of fall. In my opinion, some of the best colors of the season come out in fall, because there is such a huge variety of colors, and fall actually exists much longer than spring. So yes, spring also has a lot of different colors, but spring lasts, the colorful phase of spring lasts about 2 to 4 weeks in most places, but compared to that, fall kind of lasts over a period of a month or so, unless it rains pretty bad, and then all the leaves shed off. So fall is much more longer lasting. So there's like a riot of colors in the trees, and I absolutely enjoy fall that way. Actually, I enjoy all different seasons for different reasons, and I'm sure everybody else does too. But the colors, the variety of colors in fall is just remarkable. So you can see that I've put a lot of different colors for the fall background. Lots of browns, red, oranges. And now what I'm doing here is dotting with some dark browns in between all those colors so that I set a very dark background for my highlight colors of orange and yellow. I'll be using a lot of oranges and yellows for highlights. To mix a nice orange with oil paints can be a little bit tricky if you're not very conversant with mixing colors. So what I would suggest is using like a bright red, something like permanent rose or magenta, and mixing it with cad yellow. That would probably give you the best result. I've also used some Indian yellow in certain parts of this fall area to give the kind of Indian yellow has a very, what should I call it, a very chic look, or more like a very earthy tone. Not really chic, it's more like an earthy tone, and I love that color. It's very folly, for the lack of the better color. It represents autumn so well, so I'm using that, and a lot of cadmium yellow. And in some areas I've mixed the cadmium yellow with quite a bit of white to get very bright highlights also. Once again, using just that dotting technique to keep it simple and easy, not going for any typical like details or trying to go and paint each and every leaf or trying to give the leaf shapes. Making it very simple, more enjoyable painting than a very detailed painting. Not that there is anything wrong in detail paintings, I love those, but sometimes you just want to paint something to feel good, to learn more, and just enjoy the process. This is one of those paintings. Now onto the winter part. Now the winter birch trees will have no leaves, so that I don't have to worry about the leaves. But since I will not have leaves, I need to put a lot more attention to the tree trunks and branches. So this is a time I picked up a nice good round brush, a very almost new one, which has the bristles all together, and I am making a mix of raw umber and Prussian blue, and I'm painting very tiny lines in between the whites and the browns and adding a lot of branches. Now for the side branches, I started off with a mix of dark Prussian blue and brown, but later I thought that it probably need to be a tad bit duller, so I mixed in a tiny bit of white to it to make it more gray, and that is how I painted the nice tiny branches. If you have a very nice detailed brush, a round brush which has a very nice new fresh tip, a very nice angle, that will make your life a lot easier to paint these small details. They'll flow very nicely. And whenever you feel that the paint is becoming streaky, it is not flowing very well, add a little bit more of Liquin or whatever medium you're using. Some of the areas I have used very little paint actually, and a very little color actually, and made it a lot more gray. And some of the areas I've made it a lot darker and used a lot more of blue and brown. And that is once again going back to the same theory of adding a lot of contrast in your painting. That makes it look really, really nice. At this point my camera turned into a different angle, so I missed out a little bit of the painting. But I was still just painting the branches, more of the branches, so you did not miss out on much. I'm showing very many branches, a lot of them, so that you can learn more on exactly what I am doing. But if you are kind of have been doing painting for quite a bit, it's probably nothing that you need to learn for new, and you can very well skip like 2-3 minutes of this painting at this part, because I'm repeating the same thing over and over and trying to show the different ways, tree or branches. You need to make it look different, make it look, go in different directions to make it look more natural, adding a lot of more side branches go here and there wherever I feel that there is a little bit emptiness in the background, although the emptiness is required to show the barrenness of winter. That is the beauty of winter in general. Now I'm going back to the other 3 seasons, which is fall, spring, and summer. And what I'm doing here is I have created a mix of brown, blue, and white, which is kind of like a dull gray. And I'm adding in a lot of side branches with that color first. So what I'm doing is I'm putting in a dark base first wherever there is not a dark base. Whereas there is already a dark base branch, there I am putting in a little more highlight by adding a tiny bit of yellow and white to that same mix of brown and blue, and going over those side branches with this highlight so that kind of looks like, shows the impression of dark and light, and the light and shadow because of the sunlight in the painting. This is something that is kind of difficult to explain in words, so I showed it again and again 4 or 5 different times so that you get the understanding of what exactly I'm doing here. In the darker areas, I'm using lighter highlights. In the lighter areas, I'm using some dark shadows, once again to enhance the contrast. Like here, I'm using some very dark shadows around the trees and making that is punching up the contrast quite a bit. But in some of the areas where there is already dark, I'll add a little bit of lighter highlights, and that way it will punch up the contrast. The next few minutes is once again repetition of the same thing in different areas and different ways, just making them look kind of differing the brush strokes, turning them right and left from time to time so that the interest keeps on. It looks varied in different areas, and just going over the same thing. So once again, if this is something that you have already got the hang of, you can skip the next few minutes because it's the same thing over and over again. Overall, this is a much slower painting, like I mentioned at the very beginning, because I wanted it to be a step-by-step tutorial for the viewers who have requested them for a long time. And if you do not like them, do let me know in the comments, because I try to do all different kinds of things that viewers request out of me, because you are the reason why I do this. That is one of the reasons that I do YouTube videos of paintings. Is I love to share the processes. Whatever I have learned, I love to share that with you. And if you're not benefited out of these videos, then it becomes pointless. Obviously, it's not. Some people like shorter videos, some people like longer videos, and there is no way that in one video I will be able to please all the 2 different groups of people who want 2 different kinds of speed. But at the same time, I try to do more of the ones that you enjoy more. So let me know in the comments what you enjoy more, the shorter ones or the longer ones, and I'll try to mix and match both of them. And do not forget to use the YouTube settings to fasten or slow down the paintings tutorials as much as you want it to be to fit your requirements, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the painting. That is an awesome YouTube feature, so do make good use of it. This is one of the areas where I'm adding lighter colored branches because there is already a lot of dark colors in the background to make it pop. And I'm also going to use a lot of shadows around those lighter branches to make those come up even more prominently. So this is pretty much it to this painting or in general. Although there is still about 7 minutes to this painting, it is a repetition of the same thing. I showed the same things that I did in different areas so that you get a very nice feel of what I did in different areas and how you can create variety of brush strokes to make it look more natural. The more different kind of branches you paint, the more natural it would look, because it's the thing of nature that it has a lot of variety, and that if you want to look at more natural, more realistic, then variety is the name of the game. And once again, note that I am focusing a lot on creating the contrast. So if I'm adding lighter branches over darker areas, I'm also adding some shadows around those so that the lighter areas really pop up. I'm also adding a little bit more of gnarly branches from the sides. Once I'm done with the side branches, I will move on to the trunk and create some more fine details in each of the areas on the tree trunks. Going back to the winter area and making some of the branches even more prominent, adding more branches, and because at this point it kind of felt like me that it is not enough branches. This area is looking like really barren, much more barren than winter actually is, and I wanted to keep a parity amongst all the trees in different areas. If one area has a lot of solid branches, the other areas should have too, because the trees lose leaves but the branches are still there in winter. Key to painting these detailed branches very nicely is to get a nice detail or round brush, a smaller one. However, in all the other areas of the painting, I've used all my damaged brushes to add more texture to the trunks and the leaves, and that worked out wonderfully. Like if you look now closely at the leaves, they are just dabs of paint, but if you go a little bit away from the painting, then you will see that it has much it has a look of the leaves that you're going for. It doesn't look like blobs of paint actually. I'm adding some final highlights in each of the tree trunks. I'm using a very bright white, nothing but white is on my brush, and once again I'm moved on to my damaged brushes so that they automatically add a lot of texture while I'm adding the paint. So I'll go over each and every branch and add a lot of highlights in each and every branch, or rather each and every tree trunk, not really each and every branch. And that will add the final bit of contrast look to the painting. I'm repeating the same thing in all different tree trunks. It's nothing new again, but I just wanted to show it in different areas so that you get a very good hang of what is going on in this painting. It's almost like, you know, the live stream kind of paintings that you watch a lot on YouTube, where you see the entire painting step by step and you can work along with it. That was the goal kind of in this particular tutorial, and I don't know whether it worked for you. That is something I really would like to know from you, whether this is slow enough or this is too slow, or you know, whatever, it works or not. I'd always like to know your thoughts. Sometimes it is, sometimes people share even like hurtful things, not just to be hurtful, but you know, something they do not like, they share it, and I sometimes like that, because honest comments or honest feedbacks are the ones that make you learn the most. So at this point of the painting, it's almost coming to an end. So if you like the paintings, do give me a thumbs up. It motivates me and makes a lot of difference. Also, if you're not already subscribed, then do hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell, because that is the only way you will be notified every time I post a new videos. I post new videos every Wednesday and Friday in the evening EST hours. And that's all about this painting. Thank you for watching and putting in time. And even if you do not want to paint it, I think it's a very soothing, relaxing video to watch. Maybe set it at twice the pace and just sit with a cup of tea and enjoy and have it after a hard day of work, and that will be very relaxing in my opinion. So I'm adding a final few touches. And do share it with your friends if they are interested in these kind of paintings, because sharing is caring. You're not only helping me out, but you're sharing beautiful things with your friends. So that's me signing the painting and showing that it's come to an end. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.